I'm 5'5.5". I have blue eyes. I have a full set of dentures. I don't have any teeth. Let's see. I'm 142 pounds. The same. My goal weight this year, the same weight as Bruce Lee. And I love life. I'm just so happy to be alive. My name's Michael. I'm 37 years old. I have 7 months and 12 days clean. I've been a member on and off for about 10 years. I've been baptized for 2 Julys now, so almost like 2 years. I go to church every Sunday. I go to the mental health groups. I go to CR every Thursday. I go to the Recoveries Anonymous meetings. I go to NA. I go to AA. I have a care coordinator. I have a peer support, and they help me with different things in my life. Like they help me find an apartment. I go shopping with my peer support. Both my parents are dead because of drugs. My mother overdosed in my bed about 5 years ago, and I couldn't save her with 911 on the line, and my dad died of congestive heart failure. My parents were on vacation in Tijuana, and I was born in LA. They were moving marijuana from Mexico to the States and used my birth as an excuse to cross the border. When they got stopped, my dad said, "My son's gonna be born in America." And they waited for my mom to go into real labor pangs, and Border Patrol let them go. And that's how I was born. And then my parents moved to Compton, and shortly after that, they split up. I couldn't tell you why. And my mother moved out to Pennsylvania, and my dad moved back to Minnesota. I spent the first half of my life, the first 19 years of my life, with my mother in Pennsylvania, and the second half with my dad. At 12 years old, I was hurt real bad sexually, and I started to drink and use drugs, and it just kind of progressed over the years to kind of deal with that. Like that was my therapy. The last 5 years, it got really, really difficult. And then, I went into a really dark place with my addiction. Not so long after that, I looked in the mirror and I said, "Mikey, you're never gonna be good enough. You're never gonna be able to adjust yourself to be able to be in the lives of the people that love you, and you're just never gonna meet expectations." And I tried to off myself. I went across both my arms. The only presence in that room was God. It just progressively got worse, like my depression and things like that. Like I said, I've had more homes than I've had birthdays. I have a 20-year resume. But the last 5 years of my addiction were really, really difficult. I truly felt like when my mother overdosed and died in my bed, like 95% of the Michael that everybody knew died that year. So like I said, I have 7 months and 12 days. It was on my mother's birthday of this year that I lost my home because of damages. It was on her birthday that I overdosed right before that. And I woke up in the grass and I just said, both my parents were in their 50s. If I kept going the way they were going, I wasn't gonna make it any longer. So I decided to clean up then. I signed myself into Prairie. I met Shane Kayeska at the Lighthouse. I completed CD, I completed MI, I completed outpatient. Shane helped me get an apartment while I was in treatment. I prayed for that apartment, and God has seemed to always have answered all my prayers, especially when it's something that's good for me. I quit smoking cigarettes, I quit drinking, I quit using drugs, I quit vaping, I quit eating unhealthy food, I quit cursing. My whole life did like a 100% 180. I just decided that I'm not gonna make it very much longer if I kept going like that. And for the last 20 years of my life, I was living in this delusion, believing that using drugs, alcohol, surrounding myself by sex, drugs, alcohol, chaos, and having people, my social life in my home was what was making me happy. And now, thanks to Lighthouse, I'm able to separate my social life from my home, I wouldn't be able to do that if I was still using drugs. The recovery community here means everything to me. I'm able to have a social life that's repairing all of the trauma and damage that I've experienced externally and put myself through in my life with my addiction issues. I honestly would not be alive. I truly wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my higher power, for God first, and for whatever concept that everyone in the recovery rooms, their higher power is just as important to me as my own concept, because mine saved my life, and I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for God. I can't stay alive without the recovery community, so that's why I value their concept of a higher power just as much as my own, because that's the discipline that God wants me to have in order to be able to stay alive. I'm grateful every day for my life, and that, like, I always try to thank people in recovery meetings for helping me stay alive for another day. I've lived in Fargo half my life. I've always wanted an apartment on the south side of town, right? Because like the north side, I mean, that's where I lost my mother, and there's just a lot of like, there's not as much recovery meetings on the north side as there is on the south side. And I felt like on the north end of town, it would be a whole lot harder for me to be able to stay clean. So like I was really praying for a fresh start on the south side where I can be close to all my recovery meetings. At first, I had an interview with an apartment like way south of here, and that didn't work out. So then the second time I applied for this other place, and it was just like on like the 1st Avenue or 2nd Avenue North, and it wasn't exactly what I was praying for, but then we kind of like, you know, let it go because I figured I was going to get that apartment. And right nearing the end of my treatment, I got a hold of them and I said, well, how long is it going to be? And they said it could be about 6 months. And I would have had to have gone back to the shelter and be at risk of using again. Shane real quick had one more thing that he could help me with. He had another reference or connection, and introduced me to my landlord that I had today, and that is actually not far from here, and it's right exactly what I was praying for. And like it wasn't working out exactly the way I wanted it to work out, but it's not my plan. It's God's plan. And so the answer was yes to my prayer. It just wasn't what I was expecting. And it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for Shane. And for me, staying on top of it, I made progress every single day. I've always felt welcomed here. Now, church can be kind of an uptight place. Like I've entered into churches where no one will even talk to you. And it's like, you're kind of like left at like, figuring it out on your own, or whatever the sermon you can get from the pastor. It's not that like, people aren't good in other Christian environments. There's every church I've ever entered was good. It's that in Lighthouse, there are people that understand kind of what I'm going through, like when it comes to like hurts, habits, and hang-ups. One person might be able to empathize with my childhood sexual trauma. Another person might be able to empathize with my addiction or alcoholism. Another person might be able to empathize with my disassociation. Another person might be able to empathize with my suicidal issues that I've struggled with in the past. But what this community has truly done for me is, nearing the end of my addiction, the Human Service Center was really concerned about my well-being. I've been suicidal in the past. They know my history in that. They know that I've attempted it without anybody being at fault but myself. So they were really concerned about me because my addiction, it got really scary for me. Like they were worried about my life. And they put me on this ATO. Being able to separate my social life from my home and being like a normal member of the world again in recovery, my ATO's up and I no longer have to be a client at the Human Service Center. Like that is how independent Lighthouse is helping me become. And now I just am going to be working with Shane and Brett and coming to church, and it's like a load off. It's like everything that was ever heavy or hard to deal with in my life is gone. I love this community with all my heart, and it's non-denominational, so it's like no matter what Christian background you come from, you're welcome here. And no matter, even if you're not from a Christian background, you're welcome here. Wherever you're at in life, you're welcome here. It's an environment that I have never experienced before, and I've experienced every kind of church you can think of. Growing up, I was even kidnapped by a cult when I was 10, 11 years old with my mother in Mississippi. They put a gun to my mother's head and said, "You're staying here, right?" And then like my mother like escaped with me, and I didn't know. Like they took me fishing, let me watch this movie. I was having a good time. I was just a kid though. I didn't know. I'd been in like, both extremes of church, and this is like the most welcoming, balanced environment of a Christian community that I've ever been a part of. My favorite thing about Lighthouse is the fact that Pastor Dale actually reads scriptures, and he talks about the scriptures more than like what's going on in the world. I love Pastor Dale's description of God's love for us, because I personally am experiencing that love in my life. I'm loving to everyone, right? So that's like a reflection of what I'm learning from God. Pastor Dale puts it in such good words. There's nothing you could do today to make God love you any more yesterday, or nothing you could do tomorrow any more than he already loves you today. So it's like, I don't even have to try to make God love me. God has always loved me. And that's like kind of the relationship that I've always understood about God. I feel like God has been my most loyal friend, been there since day one, still there today, never said nothing but "I love you" to me, answered all my prayers, and has never hurt me. No one on earth can say that. And God is my most loving, my most loyal friend. And I'm focusing at this point in my life on spending more time with God.